Why have SAO fights gotten so much shorter in SAO Alicization? Is there any truth to this? So what's up guys, Foxen here. Today let's go ahead and look at this popular claim and complaint for SAO Season 3, that supposedly all the Kirito fights have gotten shorter. On top of this, why is there so much talking? I mean, why the hell is there story in anime? I've actually even seen the complaint that somehow the animation has gotten worse for SAO Season 3. This was in comparison to Season 1 and Season 2. But, is there any validity to this? The claim about the shorter fights. And hopefully as an extension to this video you can see just how amazing the animation has gotten for SAO Season 3. So for this video I spent a couple days rewatching all SAO seasons plus movie to get this data. If you do enjoy these more in-depth SAO videos, be sure to smash that thumbs up and subscribe. Anyway, a couple key things to keep in mind. I'm going to be going over the longest or more memorable SAO fights. And since I know there will be some of you that'll argue, oh they talk way too much in this or that fight, I am going to be removing any talking sections longer than say 10 seconds, and any flashbacks too, just for good measure. And since you don't want an hour-long video, I'm going to keep this to 10 fights max per SAO season plus movie. Let's see if I could actually keep this SAO video under 10 minutes. Also, just a disclaimer, since I know someone out there will mention it, this is not at all supposed to be the perfect comparison, which I'm not even sure is possible, but this does serve as a good comparison. So before we get started, I am curious, how many of you will actually be right? Which SAO fight do you think is the longest? That's from any SAO season plus the movie. Go ahead and post your top 3 or top 5 down below. At the end of the video I will list off the top 10, and I'm sure the longest SAO fight will definitely surprise most of you. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. SAO Season 1, the top 10 key fights plus duration. This will be going in order. Number 1, Kirito and Asuna and the other guys versus the first floor raid boss. 5 minutes 42 seconds. That's with cutting out the flashback. If you do want to get super critical about this fight, this whole thing has a good chunk of stills for action sequences. Also, just without the whole dying sequence plus related flashback, this goes down to 4 minutes 30 seconds. Number 2, the Gleam fight scene, 5 minutes 30 seconds. That is from the time that Asuna and Kirito get to the room, to the time that Double Kirito shatters the boss. Up until this point in the anime, this was by far the longest, and arguably one of the first true SAO fights. Definitely one of the most memorable SAO moments. If we do actually start this when Asuna goes into the room, ending when the boss shatters, you get 3 minutes 25 seconds. That's also cutting out a few flashbacks and character thoughts within this. Number 3, Kirito vs Kayaba, 1 minute 34 seconds. That's from the very start of the PK countdown to the very end. Also, if you do want to be anal about it, in this fight they did reuse some of the shots of Kirito swinging his blade, and then same for Kayaba for some of the shield blocking. They also reused the wide shot of them fighting. Oh yes, and there's more. That dual wielding shot was reused from the Minotaur fight. Although let me just be clear that I'm totally fine with this, cause I didn't even notice this and I watched this tens of times. Number 4, that laughing coffin hidden guy versus Kirito plus Asuna, 3 minutes 34 seconds. So far in this point in the anime, this seemed to be the second longest conflict or action scene. Although I'm gonna bet that most of you wouldn't exactly count this as a battle. If we actually edit this down to when Asuna shows up, you get 1 minute 34 seconds. That's with the Asuna small talk removed. Kirito versus a thirsty Asuna, 4 seconds. The actual number 5, Kirito and the guild versus the Skull Reaper. Until the end of the episode, 2 minutes 13 seconds. I should note that a good majority of the action stuff here, including the blocks and strikes, are still images. If you actually combine the entire Skull Reaper fight with the next episode, that's 3 minutes 8 seconds. The whole thing was pretty much a massacre. And once again, not really showing the details of the whole fight. For me, this once again cemented how much the fights really weren't a priority for SAO. Oh, and I did notice one reuse shot, which was Asuna and Kirito switching, same from the Gleam fight. Number 6, Kirito vs Kayaba round 2, 4 minutes 32 seconds. This is from the start of the battle all the way until Kayaba goes boom. Overall, it looks like a pretty long battle sequence from start to end. But how much of this was actually fighting? The answer to that really depends on how you slice this up. From the start of Kirito vs Kayaba up until Asuna shatters is about 2 minutes. Then what follows I really wouldn't call the next part of fight, but if you do include that, that's 3 minutes. So go ahead and take your pick. Kirito making a reference to his Eugeo avatar, 5 seconds. The Salamander attackers versus Kirito and Lifa, 4 minutes 50 seconds. That is from the very start to the very end. The whole fight was pretty much uninterrupted. This is definitely one of the longest action sequences in Season 1, funny enough. In my opinion, also pretty underrated. Number 8, Kirito vs Eugeo, 3 minutes 21 seconds. That is from the start of the first swing up until Eugene's wipeout. Once again, actually a pretty long ass fight for the fairy dance arc. Very little dance spots. If you actually do cut the sharp pause between Kirito using the smoke screen to him coming back down, you get about 3 minutes. Number 9. Kirito vs. the World Tree Guardians Round 1, 3 minutes 7 seconds. Just notice, another pretty long fight sequence by SAO standards, and at the very end a clear Kirito loss by the way. Kirito and the rest of the guys versus the World Tree Round 2, a whopping 7 minutes 31 seconds. A little funny how the fairy arc got so much longer action sequences. It is over 7 freaking minutes. Just keep in mind I am combining the first part with the second part when reinforcements show up. Now if you actually remove a couple things, you get down to about 6 minutes. That's removing the Leafa and Friendzone talk, removing the short sequence of the reinforcements arriving, and finally removing Leafa's talk. Here's a bonus one, a Kayama powered Kirito versus a Fairy King, 3 minutes 42 seconds. So this one actually is a tricky one. Where do you actually start this? If you actually remove some of the talking and start the timer when Kirito brings out the Excalibur, you get down to about 2 minutes. And then about 1 minute if you actually start the timer at the first sword swing. So I'll let you decide. Next up, let's get into SAO Season 2, the longest fights plus duration. SAO Season 2 did have the GGO arc, which included the bullet-to-bullet tournament. In other words, tons of places for some action. Number 1, Sinon and her party versus the Bounty, 8 minutes and 45 seconds. So another interesting fight like the World Tree one. Just keep in mind there's a lot of talking and running sequences in this whole scene. This action scene also comes after an episode without any action scenes at all, the first one. If you edit this down, you get to about 6 minutes. That's removing some of the Sinon pep talk, and also Sinon running over to the building. Number 2, Kirito in the qualifiers round 1, 4 minutes 44 seconds. Keep in mind that's from Kirito entering the battlefield up until the very end. Once again, the question about how much fighting there actually was comes up. If you trim some stuff down, you get to 2 minutes 27 seconds. A good chunk of that was actually Kirito just trying to locate the guy. The actual fight also wasn't that long. There was just a lot of slow motion added just to emphasize Kirito's Jedi-like lightsaber movements, which was freaking awesome by the way. Number 3, Kirito vs. Sinon, 6 minutes 43 seconds. Once again for this one being from the very start of the round up until Sinon gives up. If you actually strip out the fat, you get 2 minutes 29 seconds. That includes removing some talking, removing the Sinon flashback, and also just cutting out the whole Kirito discussion before he throws up the bullet. Number 4, the death gun fight, the total. 3 minutes 55 seconds, almost 4 minutes. Couple things to keep in mind about this whole death gun fight. This is actually combining the start of the death gun fight from the previous end of the episode. If you combine every single thing from episode 12 and episode 13, you get about 4 minutes. I'll let you decide how fair that is. Number 5, Kirito Asuna and the SAO team versus the Gold and Black Minotaur, 5 minutes 27 seconds. Arguably, this really wasn't that serious of a battle, but it did allow the anime to showcase some of the updated alpha and version of everyone. If you actually remove the party discussion, you get to 5 minutes 8 seconds. Overall, pretty long fight, and it actually makes up for nothing in the previous episode. Number 6, Kirito and friends versus that god boss. In total, 4 minutes 50 seconds. So once again, another interesting fight. The almost 5 minute fight is combining 2 parts, which is the initial SAO guys versus his god braid boss. And then the second boss when he actually had the addition of the Thor guy helping them. So far, it's just a little ironic how the least popular SAO arc has some of the longer SAO fights. Number 7, Asuna vs Yuki, 3 minutes 6 seconds. The only real thing I have to say about this is that this is definitely one of my favorite SAO fights. Maybe I should do my top 10 for that. Let me know if you want to see that down below. Number 8, the Sleeping Knights versus the Floor Raid boss, almost 4 minutes. And that's pretty much it. Surprise! SAO Season 2 really only has 8 spawns. I'm actually not going to force it just to fit 10 up here. Anything else from SAO Season 3 was less than 2 minutes just to start off. In other words, before trimming off the fat. Next up, the SAO Ordinal Scale movie. This movie definitely allowed the A1 studio to showcase some beautiful SAO showdowns. Number 1, the Samurai boss fight, 4 minutes 20 seconds. That's from the very start up until the boss KO. Number 2, Asuna plus the other guys versus the Griffin plus Rockbus plus AG, 3 minutes 30 seconds. Really 2 fights showcased here, which is why I actually thought the whole combination of this would be longer. Number 3, Asuna, Silica, and Liz versus the Crab and later the Dragon, almost 4 minutes 40 seconds. As you might have remembered, there's actually some fat to trim here. If you edit it down, you get about 3 minutes 30 seconds. That includes removing the talk that Asuna had with AG, then removing a chunk of Yuna's second song starting. Number 4, Kirito and Sinon versus that piggy boss, about 1 minute 50 seconds. If you actually trim some of the Yui fat away, you get about 1 minute 30 seconds. Number 5, Kirito versus that red Golem boss, 16 seconds. Number 6, Kirito versus that red wolf boss, 1 minute 15 seconds. Number 7, Kirito vs Eugeo, about 2 minutes. Although keep in mind this fight does actually have some fat in between it. If you do cut out some of the flashbacks and talks, you get about 1 minute 40. Number 8, Kirito and the SAO guys versus the final SAO boss, part 1, about 1 minute 40 seconds. Keep in mind this is from the time that the boss attacks, up until Asuna shows up. Then number 9, everyone versus the final boss, about 2 minutes 40 seconds. For this whole final boss sequence, I actually don't mind combining the first two parts together, which means the total boss fight is about 4 minutes 30 seconds. To be honest, it felt a little longer. Funny how that is. Next up, now getting into the meat of this, SAO Alicization Season 3 longest fights. For this, I'm actually going to go more in depth than just go over every Season 3 fight. First off, the Integrity Knight versus that Dark Territory Knight, 54 seconds. That whole Eugeo scene, 3 minutes. This was the whole scene featuring Kirito, Asuna, Sinon, Liz, Silica, and even Klein. Did I forget someone? Keep in mind this technically was anime original, it was not in the SAO light novels. Next up, Kirito and Eugeo versus the goblins, about 6 minutes. This is starting from the point that Kirito and Eugeo charge in, then ending with the goblin's head flies off. You should notice that they actually made this battle much longer in the anime. Long ass battle too, longer than most things in SAO Season 1. Except for maybe Kirito and friends versus the World Tree Round 2. If we do trim off the fat, we get about 5 minutes. That's removing the little moment with carved up Eugeo. Next up, the quick Zakaria flashback, 34 seconds. Next up, Kirito vs Lina Senpai, 42 seconds. Next up, the first Academy battle, Kirito vs Volo, 2 minutes 10 seconds. Next up, now Lina Senpai vs Volo, about 1 minute 20 seconds. For this, actually notice that the fight was shown for the anime, compared to the SAO light novel where they just mention the results. Quickly, I may add. Next up, Eugeo versus that mustard noble dude, about 1 minute 10 seconds. Next up, Kirito and Eugeo versus the noble bastards, 5 minutes 20 seconds. This is starting from the very moment that Eugeo put his hand on the blade, then ending when Ryo's got his hand sliced off. Depending on how you chop this off, this is like the second longest intense alicization scene yet. Next up, Kirito and Eugeo versus the first Integrity Knight, Eldry, about 3 minutes 45 seconds. The start of this being when both of the guys charging in, then the fight ending when the snake whip turns back. If you do trim off a little bit of the fat, you get 3 minutes 5 seconds. So yes, despite some complaints I've seen about this fight, it still is 3 minutes. That's a good chunk. Next up, Quinella vs Cardinal, about 2 minutes. They did technically add this new action scene for the anime, compared to just explaining it in the light novel. Next up, Kirito and Eugeo vs the Crimson Integrity Knight, about 7 holy minutes. That's from the start of the Crimson Integrity Knight shooting the arrows, then ending when his popsicle ass goes down. Once again, for this fight, I've seen a lot of complaints about there being too much talking. If you do edit out all the flashbacks and talking, you get about 5 minutes. So yeah, even if you remove the fat, that still is a good chunk for SAO. Next up, Kirito and Eugeo vs Integrity Knight Fanatio. Almost 10 freaking minutes, holy crap. That's beginning from the time Kirito charges towards Fanatio up until the end of the episode. This is literally longer than anything in SAO yet. Alright, but let's be fair, how much fat is there? If you actually edit this out, you get about 6 minutes. That's removing a lot of the back and forth between Kirito and Fanatio, and also removing that short flashback from Fanatio generously explaining her weapon power. Next up, the conclusion of the Fanatio fight, about 1 minute. So yes, technically if you combine this with the previous episode, the fight gets even longer, almost 7 minutes. Next up, Kirito and Eugeo vs Integrity Knight Alice, about 5 minutes. This is starting from the time that Alice draws her blade, up until they blow up the friggin' tower and exit. If you do want to trim out the fat, you get about 3 minutes. That is removing some of the early Kirito BSing, and then some of the side thoughts from Eugeo. Next up, Kirito and Alice versus the Dark Territory statues, about 4 minutes. So this is a tricky one. This is starting from the time that the gargoyles show up until Kirito finishes off the last one. If you actually strictly go based on the fighting that these guys do, you would get about 1 minute of action. Next up, Eugeo versus the Integrity Knight Bercoli, about 5 minutes. This is beginning from when Bercoli smashes the ground with his foot, and then ending when Bercoli gets into the bath. Once again, I've seen a lot of complaints about this fight, too much talking. If you trim out the fat, you get about 1 minute 40 seconds. That's trimming a lot of the Eugeo talk, some of the Bercoli flashback explaining his weapon, and then anything after Eugeo does his release recollection in the water. If you do include some of that, you get about 2 minutes. Next up, Eugeo vs Quinella in the bed, using the wrong sword, about 7 minutes. Next up, Kirito vs Integrity Knight Eugeo, 6 minutes 40 seconds. This is from the start of the episode up until he throws Kirito and leaves. At first, I did think this was in competition for one of the longest SAO fights. Although, if you do trim out the fight, you get about 3 minutes 40 seconds. I'll let you decide how fair that is. A good chunk of that is actually removing Kirito's thoughts and him talking to Eugeo, trying to bring him back, and also some small talk from Alice. Next up, Alice, Eugeo, and Kirito versus that friggin' clown, about 3 minutes. Interesting how this was actually one of the length of the average fights in SAO Season 1. Next up, the Sword Titan versus the trio, about 3 minutes too. This is starting from when the Sword Titan charges at them, up until Cardinal shows up and shoots it. Next up, Eugeo going Blade Mode, about 3 minutes 50 seconds. Honestly, this is another one of those tricky ones, since you technically got Eugeo transforming, then fighting the Sword Titan, and then aiming for Quinella. I'll let you decide how fair this is. The end of this does end when the sword crashes down. Finally, the grand finale, Dual Blade Kirito vs Quinella, about 7 minutes. This is from the start that Kirito goes into his Black Swordsman persona, then ending when Quinella becomes a hollow. And yes, this fight was actually made a lot longer in the anime. If you actually do remove the fat, you get about 5 minutes. That's removing the whole Eugeo flashback, and some of the part where Kirito gets the red rose sword. By the way, good thing Quinella was so hairy, otherwise you might have seen something. As you can now see, most of the key fights in SAO Alicization were actually longer than anything in the Ikran arc of SAO. The only exception to this being the final Kirito vs Kayaba fight, depending on how you slice it. Now, if you actually bring in the fairy dance arc that gets a good amount of hate, ironically now you actually have a better comparison to SAO Alicization. It seems that most of the key fights come in around the 3 to 5 minute mark for SAO overall. Let me go ahead and list off the top 10 longest fights for everything involving SAO, except the spin-off. This will be going down in order with the regular time and the trimmed down time. Number 1, the SAO Fairy Dance Arc, the Salamanders vs Kirito and Lifa, 4 minutes 50 seconds. Number 2, the SAO Fairy Dance Arc, Kirito and Friends vs the World Tree Round 2, about 7 minutes 30 seconds. Number 2, the SAO Caliber Arc, the SAO team versus a Gold and Black Minotaur, about 5 minutes 30 seconds. Number 4, again the Caliber Arc, Kirito and Friends vs the God Boss, about 5 minutes 50 seconds combined time. Number 5, the Eugeo arc, Sinon and her party versus that Eugeo group, almost 9 minutes. Number 6, the SAO movie, the final boss fight, a combined total of about 4 minutes 30 seconds. That is adding up part 1 and part 2 of the whole fight. Number 7, SAO Alicization, Kirito and Eugeo versus the Goblins, about 6 minutes. Number 8, SAO Alicization, Kirito and Eugeo versus the Crimson Integrity Knight, about 7 minutes. Number 9, Kirito and Eugeo versus Integrity Knight Fanatio, almost 10 minutes. And finally, number 10, SAO Alicization, Kirito vs Quinella, about 7 minutes. But wait, there's more. Here's a couple honorable mentions. The SAO Aincrad arc, the Gleamice fight, about 5 minutes. Second honorable mention, the SAO Eugeo fight, Kirito vs Death Gun, about 4 minutes. Third honorable mention, the Mother's Rosario arc, the Sleeping Knights vs that Raid floor boss, about 4 minutes. Next honorable mention, the SAO movie, that Samurai boss fight, about 4:20. And finally, SAO Alicization, Kirito vs Integrity Knight Eugeo, about 6:40 seconds. So it turns out if you actually look at every SAO fight, what do you know? SAO Alicization fights actually take up almost half of the top 10 spots for the longest SAO battle scenes. And yes, that's after you remove all the chatter and flashbacks. SAO Season 3 notably has the longest battle sequence yet with Kirito and Eugeo vs Fanatio. It seems that battles in general also lean towards being longer than the other SAO seasons, on average. That's for sure if you include the back and forth going on in between the battles. Although to be fair, it does seem that past SAO seasons did have a lot less of this chatter going on, not counting the flashbacks. But then again, those fights did end quicker, usually between the 3 to 4 or 5 minute time range. Hell, Kirito vs that Gleamice fight that's so iconic is really only about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Meanwhile, for the other infamous Kayaba fights, about 1.5 minutes for the first one, and about 2 to 3 minutes depending on how you slice round 2. Just go ahead and compare this to Kirito vs Quinella, which is coming in almost at 5 minutes. That's trimming away the fat. Which really just means most key fights in SAO Alicization are several times this. That's what's slicing away the chatter and flashbacks. In other words, that SAO first arc that a lot of people claim was the best doesn't even account for the longer SAO fights. This does beg the question, why are some fans who claim they like the past SAO seasons now claiming these fights are shorter? There's a couple likely theories about this. First off, it's really just nostalgia. I'm betting that most people don't rewatch SAO as much as I do, and they're really just thinking these fights were a lot longer than they actually were. And reason 2, which might be getting at the root of this, which might be grasping for a complaint for SAO Season 3. What I mean by this is that there is actually a good questionable size of SAO fans who just don't like Season 3 for whatever reason. Supposedly it feels too different from the past stuff, although never mind the fact that all SAO arcs have a totally different feel to each one of them. And don't get me wrong, you can be an SAO fan and truly not like Season 3, and that's totally fine. As a huge SAO fan, I kinda do feel bad since you're missing out on some amazing stuff, but oh well. Anyway, way longer video than I expected. Be sure to like the video if you made it this far. If you do see anyone claiming that SAO fights have gotten shorter, now you can direct them to this video. But anyway, more important, let me hear from you now. Which has been your top favorite SAO fight so far? Have they been any fights in SAO Season 3? And have you seen anyone claiming fights have gotten shorter for Season 3 for whatever reason? Go ahead and post that juicy stuff below. Anyway, be sure to smash that thumbs up and subscribe. Be sure to check back weekly for SAO videos. I'm also covering Attack on Titan, Shield Hero, and any other juicy anime video that drops. Go ahead and check out my recent video covering Kirito's Golden Eyes. Be sure to click bell notifications and I'll see you guys later.